Hey everyone, and welcome to the channel. Today we're diving into the fascinating world of logical fallacies. We're talking about the art of argumentation, the ways in which our thinking can go astray, and how to avoid those pitfalls. Understanding these common errors in reasoning can be a real game changer. Not only will it help you spot faulty logic in other people's arguments, but it'll also make you a more critical thinker and a more persuasive communicator. So, buckle up, because we're about to dive into the wonderful world of logical fallacies. Alright, let's kick things off with a fallacy that's about as subtle as a brick to the face, the ad hominem. This one's a classic, and it's all about attacking the person making the argument instead of addressing the argument itself. Imagine this. You're debating the merits of a plant-based diet with your friend, and instead of engaging with your points about sustainability and health, they hit you with, well, you eat like a ton of junk food, so you're not exactly one to talk. Ouch. See, that's a classic ad hominem attack. It's irrelevant to the actual argument about plant-based diets. Your friend is trying to discredit your position by attacking your character, which is a big no-no in the world of logical argumentation. So, how do you counter an ad hominem? The key is to politely but firmly steer the conversation back to the actual issue at hand. Remind your friend, hey, whether or not I eat junk food doesn't change the environmental impact of animal agriculture. Ever feel like you're arguing with someone who's just determined to misunderstand you, like they're twisting your words and attacking a position you never even took? Well, my friend, you've probably encountered the straw man fallacy. It's like this. Imagine you're suggesting that your school should invest more in its music program. You argue that music education has been proven to improve cognitive skills and creativity. Now, a straw man argument would be someone responding with, so you're saying we should just ignore math and science and focus entirely on music? See how they've completely misrepresented your argument? You never said anything about neglecting other subjects. The straw man fallacy thrives on misrepresentation. So, how do you fight back against a straw man? It's all about clarity, my friends. When you sense your argument is being misrepresented, calmly and clearly restate your original point. Emphasize what you actually meant and highlight how the other person's interpretation is inaccurate. Alright, let's talk about one of the sneakiest fallacies out there. The appeal to ignorance. This one's a master of shifting the burden of proof and making you feel like you have to disprove something instead of the other way around. Here's the gist. Someone asserts that something is true simply because it hasn't been proven false or vice versa. They'll say things like, well, nobody's ever proven that aliens don't exist, so they must be real. Or, on the flip side, there's no evidence to support your claim, so it must be wrong. But hold on a second. The absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. Just because something hasn't been proven one way or another doesn't automatically make it true or false. The key to combating the appeal to ignorance is to remember where the burden of proof lies. If someone is making a claim, it's their responsibility to provide evidence to support that claim. Don't fall into the trap of feeling like you need to disprove something just because they haven't proven it true. Ever feel trapped in a conversation where it seems like you only have two options, both of which are kind of awful? Like you're either with us or against us. There's no middle ground? Well, my friend, you might be caught in the clutches of a false dilemma. This fallacy, also known as black and white thinking, oversimplifies a complex issue by presenting only two extreme options as the only possibilities. It tries to force you into a corner, making you think you have to choose between two equally unappealing options when, in reality, there might be a whole range of other alternatives to consider. So, how do you escape the false dilemma trap? It's all about expanding your perspective and challenging those artificial limitations. Remind yourself and the other person that life is rarely black and white. Hold on to your hats, everyone, because we're about to slide down the slippery slope. This fallacy is a master of exaggeration, taking a seemingly small step and turning it into a catastrophic avalanche of consequences. It goes something like this. Someone proposes an action, and then, like a row of dominoes falling one after another, they predict a chain of increasingly dire events that will inevitably result from that initial action. The slippery slope fallacy thrives on fear and speculation. So, how do you avoid tumbling down the slippery slope? It's all about questioning the connections between those predicted events. Challenge the inevitability of their predictions by pointing out other factors that might influence the outcome. Ever feel like you're going in circles during an argument, like the conclusion is just a restatement of the premise, and no real evidence is being presented? Well, my friend, you might be trapped in the land of circular reasoning. This fallacy, also known as begging the question, is like trying to use a dictionary to define a word by using that same word in the definition. It's a logical loop-de-loop that gets you nowhere. For example, someone might say, the Bible is the word of God because God said so in the Bible. See how that works? The conclusion that the Bible is the word of God is used as evidence to support itself. So how do you break free from the circular reasoning cycle? It's all about demanding evidence that exists independently of the conclusion. When you spot circular logic, politely but firmly point out that the argument is simply restating the claim, and ask for evidence that doesn't rely on the conclusion itself. Remember, a sound argument needs to stand on its own 2 feet, supported by evidence that can be independently verified. We've all been there, making snap judgments based on limited information. It's human nature, right? But when we elevate those hasty generalizations to the level of logical arguments, well, that's when we run into trouble. This fallacy, as its name suggests, involves drawing a broad conclusion about a whole group or category based on a small or unrepresentative sample. Hasty generalizations often stem from stereotypes, biases, and a lack of sufficient evidence. So, how do we avoid falling into the hasty generalization trap? It's all about being mindful of our sample size and seeking out diverse perspectives. When we encounter a generalization, we should ask ourselves, is this conclusion based on sufficient evidence? Ever feel like someone's trying to change the subject during an argument? Like they're throwing in completely unrelated information to distract from the real issue at hand? Well, my friend, you've just encountered the red herring fallacy. This fallacy is a master of diversion, a rhetorical sleight of hand that tries to lead you astray from the main point. For example, imagine you're debating the environmental impact of single-use plastics, and the other person responds with, well, what about all the pollution from volcanic eruptions? That's natural, right? While volcanic eruptions do release pollutants, bringing them up in this context is a red herring. It distracts from the issue of plastic pollution and tries to shift the focus elsewhere. So, how do you spot and disarm a red herring? It's all about staying focused on the original topic and calling out irrelevant information. When you sense the conversation veering off course, politely but firmly steer it back to the main issue. We've all heard the saying, if all your friends jumped off a bridge, would you jump too? It's a classic parental retort to peer pressure, and it highlights the flaw in one of the most common logical fallacies, the bandwagon fallacy. This fallacy, also known as the appeal to popularity, argues that something must be true or good simply because a lot of people believe it or do it. It's the everybody's doing it argument, and it's often used to justify questionable behaviors or beliefs. The bandwagon fallacy preys on our desire to fit in, to be part of the majority. It tries to convince us that the sheer number of people who believe something is evidence enough of its validity. So, how do we resist the allure of the bandwagon? It's all about thinking critically and evaluating evidence independently. When we encounter an argument based on popularity, we should ask ourselves, is there actual evidence to support this claim, or is it just popular opinion? Remember, popularity is a fickle and unreliable measure of truth. We're often told to listen to experts, to trust those with knowledge and experience, and while it's generally good advice, it's important to remember that even experts can be wrong, and their expertise doesn't automatically make their arguments infallible. This is where the appeal to authority fallacy comes into play. This fallacy occurs when someone uses the opinion or endorsement of an authority figure as the sole basis for their argument, without providing any additional evidence or justification. So how do we avoid falling into the appeal to authority trap? It's all about evaluating the argument itself, not just the person making it. When we encounter an argument that relies heavily on an authority figure, we should ask ourselves, does the authority figure have relevant expertise in this specific area? Remember, respecting expertise doesn't mean blindly accepting everything an authority figure says. Well, there you have it, folks, a crash course in logical fallacies. We've journeyed through the treacherous terrain of flawed reasoning, from ad hominem attacks to slippery slope fallacies. Thanks for watching. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Leave a comment below with any logical fallacies you've encountered, or tips on how to counter them. Let's keep this conversation going and help each other become more critical thinkers. So, go forth, think critically, and may your arguments be forever fallacy-free.